That if we make it 30, nothing will be left of the fund. So in other words, Your Honor, there is some financial limitations to really just emaciating the MIF to a point wherein it can no longer perform the objectives that the proponent wishes.
Can we have it 25%?
Your Honor, we accept. 25.
The majority also joins the proposal in accepting the compromise agreement.
From the nation's capital, all sides, all the time, I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. The big story tonight.
After receiving overwhelming support at the lower house, the bill on the Maharlika Investment Fund has been passed on third and final reading at the House.
With this, the ball is now in the Senate's court with eyes on neophyte Senator Mark Villar, who will file the counterpart measure in the upper chamber. Marian Enriquez with the big story.
Speaker.
The lower house has approved the bill creating the Maharlika Investment Fund on third and final reading. Before this, lawmakers sought to make compromises on the bill. During the period of amendments for the MIF bill, ACT Teachers Party List Representative Franz Castro proposed to increase the percentage that will be remitted to the national government for social welfare projects from 20% to 30%. But this was thumbed down by House Ways and Means Chairman and Albay Representative Joey Salceda, who is one of the sponsors of the bill.
If we make it 30, nothing will be left of the fund. So wala na akong palalaguin, wala na akong bibigay na ayuda. So in other words, Your Honor, there is some financial limitations to really just emaciating the MIF to a point wherein it can no longer perform the objectives that the proponent wishes.
Can we have it 25%?
Your Honor, we accept. 25.
The majority also joins the proposal in accepting the compromise agreement.
Despite this compromise, the Makabayan bloc is still not convinced that the Philippines is ready to establish a sovereign wealth fund.
Huwag na tayong magpanggap sa usaping ito. Lubog tayo sa depisito, trilyon-trilyon ng ating utang, wala tayong surplus, pero bakit gusto pa rin nating isugal ang pondo ng financial institutions natin?
House Speaker Martin Romualdez, who was also part of the ASEAN-EU Summit delegation in Belgium, told the media that he was able to talk to Senator Mark Villar, who will be filing the counterpart measure at the Senate.
Is actually picking up from what was approved at the APRO level, no? So we have a refined measure, no? And when we spoke just last night, he says he will use the draft bill that we've already refined through APRO, approved by the banking committee that's now on the floor as the starting point, and he's very, very enthusiastic about it.
With the House approval, the bill on the Maharlika Investment Fund is now at the hands of senators. For News 5, Marian Enriquez, we are One News.
The Social Security system is set to increase the contribution of its members. The SSS says the monthly rate will be hiked to 14% from the current 13% by January 2023. This means a member earning 30,000 pesos will pay 4,200 pesos. That's an additional 300 pesos. The amount, though, will be shouldered by the employer under the Social Security Act of 2018. Members of the private sector have called for the hike's suspension amid soaring inflation. To give us his insights on the developments on the Maharlika Investment Fund bill, Senate Minority Leader Coco Pimentel is now with us over the phone. Good evening, Senator Pimentel.
Magandang gabi, Robbie, Gretchen, and to all of your viewers and listeners. Good evening to everyone.
So, Senator, as expected, the Maharlika proposal has sailed through the House of Representatives without any surprises. What do you expect once this matter gets to the Senate?
Well, the Senate, being the body having the mandate from all over the nation, senators should really go over this proposal thoroughly. Huwag po naming madaliin ito. Yan po ang pakiusap ko sa mga kapwa ko senador. Kasi this is actually meant, sovereign wealth funds in other countries. I'm not sure here in the Philippines, but in other countries are meant to benefit future generations of their people. So this will have intergenerational effects or ramifications. So it can be positive, but it can also be negative. Pwedeng benepisyo, pwedeng perwisyo. Yun po ang ating pag-ingatan. That's why hindi ko nakikita ang dahilan bakit tayo magmamadali sa isang panukala na pwedeng malaki ang potential na perwisyo ang iiwanan para sa future generations of Filipinos.
Well, despite all of the doubts, despite all of the concerns, this has passed with overwhelming consensus. More than 200 congressmen wanting to be co-authors of the bill. Does that surprise you, and what does that tell us?
No, I will no longer comment on the happenings in the House of Representatives. So I will just concern myself with what will happen in the Senate. So a Senate counterpart may be filed, as I've heard from your introduction, or it need not be filed, because if the House has already passed a measure, they will send it to the Senate. So by January or the first quarter of next year, senators should be ready to discuss this proposal. I have noticed a change in the name. No? They're making it an investment fund already. So I think that weakens the proposal because marami na investment fund. Mga SSS, GSI, they're all investment vehicles.
Whatever they end up calling this fund and whatever ultimately is the nature and structure of it, a lot of concerns, not just on the fiscal side, but particularly on the governance side. What items and what particular features on the governance side would you like to see?
I am more familiar with the first bill filed. I'm not familiar with what happened recently. So the first bill was the president, so it's too political. And then I think they changed it to Secretary of Finance, so it's also the alter ego of the president. So it's the same thing. Diba? So politics will be there. So delikado po ito. Plus the fact that corruption is still a problem here in the Philippines. Meron na nga tayong COA, may congressional oversight na rin. Hindi pa rin takot yung ibang ahensya in corruption. So what if may tatlo-tatlo kayong auditors dyan? Kung if the person or the group group of persons are not afraid of the law, then corruption will still be there. So yan po yung ating bantayan.
Given the amendments, so what safeguards would you want to pursue to make this bill foolproof, and what can we expect at the Senate?
And that will not be my role, no, because I am against this proposal. I do not believe that we need some sort of a sovereign wealth fund nowadays, or we need to replicate or duplicate the SSS, the GSIS, that we need to weaken the Land Bank and the DBP by getting their reserves. I mean, I disagree with the concept, the rationale behind this bill. So it is not my job to save this bill.
Okay. Senator Coco Pimentel, sir, maraming salamat po.
Salamat po. Thank you.
After the break, President Marcos has returned to the Philippines from Brussels, where he secured defense commitments from European partners. One News defense editor Manny Mogato will join us here in the studio to discuss the matter. More when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News.
You're watching the big story here on One News. SIM card registration is set to begin soon. Here's what we know about the registration process and how you can avoid deactivation. The SIM card Registration Act takes effect on December 27 this year. Mobile users have 180 days to register their SIM cards. Officials say they may extend that period by up to 120 days more. Users who fail to meet the deadline could face deactivation. Users are allowed to have multiple SIM cards registered. Telcos will provide the registration forms on their websites. A valid ID card or document with photo should be attached. Minors, meanwhile, have to secure consent from their parents or guardians. Prepaid users have to input their details on the telco's websites. Postpaid users, meanwhile, are required to update their credentials. The government will also facilitate remote registration. Falsification entails 2 years of jail time and up to 300,000 pesos in fines. Selling, transferring, or spoofing of registered SIM cards are also punishable.
President Bongbong Marcos is back in the country after his trip to Belgium for the ASEAN-EU Summit. President Marcos managed to secure additional investments and defense commitments from EU partners. Now, these include a 4.7 billion peso investment from multinational consumer goods company Unilever. The Netherlands has also vowed to strengthen its defense cooperation with the Philippines. President Marcos met with Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte on the sidelines of the ASEAN-EU Summit. The Philippines also secured ties with Estonia over cybersecurity defense and extradition. President Marcos also discussed issues on maritime safety with French multinational company OSEA. The company plans to put up a 1.5 billion peso shipyard in the Philippines. Now, in his speech before state leaders, President Marcos called for support and cooperation in coming up with a legal framework on the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS.
Beyond declaring respect and support for UNCLOS as a legal framework that governs all activities in the oceans and seas, we need to see an effective application of the UNCLOS to address the maritime disputes and geopolitical rivalry in the Indo-Pacific, to truly realize the still distant aspiration for the Indo-Pacific to become a sea of peace and prosperity for us all.
Let's discuss these commitments from European countries with One News Defense Editor Manny Mogato. He joins us here live on the studio. Good evening, Manny.
Good evening, Robbie. Good evening, Gretchen.
No, ang daming pinag-usapan doon, but essentially, you could all boil it down to, defense and security, very high up on the agenda of President Marcos. Where do we start? What are the main features of these things that were announced?
Well, the defense cooperation basically is bilateral agreements between the Philippines and individual European countries. Because President Marcos met with 10 leaders of EU. EU is a 27-country organization, and he only met with 10. But overall, for the ASEAN and the EU, it's all more on investment and trade. And in fact, the EU has committed to invest 10 billion euros in the next 5 years for infrastructures in ASEAN, especially for green economy and for climate change, and which is also one of the agenda of President Marcos in Europe. Aside from green technology, investment, and trade, the Philippines is also interested in reapplying for the GSP+. But all of these are tied to human rights, no? Because it's not a blanket check for the Philippines. No? You have to comply with the human rights agenda of the EU. So the defense cooperation is basically more on the bilateral relation with the countries. Like, we are buying multi-role fighters from Sweden. No? France is opening to supply us with submarines. And a French company is opening up a shipyard here in the Philippines. And with other countries, it's more on training, counterterrorism, cybersecurity, and other forms of engagement, capacity building for our soldiers. So I'm not sure if this will include visiting forces agreement to allow these countries to join exercises in the Philippines. But we only have 2 BFAs with Australia and the US.
Yes.
The others could be given their time to exercise with us if President Marcos would issue an executive order. Because right now, Canada is waiting for President Marcos to sign an executive order that will allow them to participate in Balikatan, in Kamandag, in Sama-Sama, in other exercises, because they have been here only as observers. So for the European countries, I think France, UK, the Netherlands already have logistics agreement with the Philippines. So they want to expand.
Siguro ang pinakakatanungan ng mga tao rito, I mean, when it comes to those ties, specifically with the US, with the China, is will they come to our rescue if you know, we get attacked, if our seas get conquered?
It's not automatic. It's not automatic. Even if we had mutual defense treaty with the Americans, they have to request permission from the U.S. Congress if they can come in and help us in our defense. But the U.S. State Department has already said that they will help the Philippines protect its sovereignty and its territorial integrity. And Canada, which has unveiled its Indo-Pacific strategy this month, they said that they will be spending $2.3 billion, Canadian dollars, and they said that they will help patrol the Philippine borders and stop coercive countries, countries with bullying smaller countries like the Philippines. So let's hope that they will come into our aid.
Because we did see an incident on the news today about debris and bullying on the West Philippine Sea.
Well,
Quote unquote.
it's not an aggressive action, no? Like an attack on a ship or an attack on an island that we occupy, no? So I don't think that the MDT can be applied. But the activities of China has been increasing, and you heard, you've seen the photos issued by the Westcom today. There's about 12 ships in Sabina Shoal and in the Reed Bank area. And this is very close to Palawan, because Mischief is about 185 nautical miles, but Sabina Shoal is only 126 miles. And another island is it's much closer to Palawan, it's the Reed Bank. So they're moving closer and closer, and maybe China is expanding the territory to deny our position of fishing rights.
Okay. So balik tayo dun sa trade elements that you mentioned. You mentioned GSP Plus and these trade agreements with the EU as a whole tied to human rights as well. If all of this come to pass at mamuo lahat na tong mga agreements na to, is this in effect a vote of confidence on the direction and the character of this administration, certainly relative to the last administration?
Well, some diplomats from the West, Europe, US, and Canada, were quite happy with the new government under President Marcos. They've been seeing changes because in the past 6 years, we've been isolated because of the drug war of former President Rodrigo Duterte. But they have been seeing changes, like we have 2 convictions of police officers recently, and I think the West is waiting for when former Senator Laila de Lima will be released, because that's also one of their main issues. And at the same time, they wanted some laws to be passed, like the SOGI bill, the divorce law, and to decriminalize libel. So these are the changes they're still waiting, but they said that 6 months is still a short time for Marcos to institute reforms and changes. So they're still waiting. Hopefully, these changes can occur within 1 year, and maybe we can get a vote of confidence in the West.
Okay, maraming salamat, Manny Mogato.
Thank you.
One News Defense Chief. Now, right after the break, the Ateneo Blue Eagles have forced a winner-take-all game after defeating the UB Fighting Maroons in Game 2 of the UAAP Finals. That and more when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching the big story here on One News. The World Health Organization is hoping to lift the global emergency status for COVID-19 by next year. WHO Chief Tedros Ghebreyesus said the COVID-19 death toll has drastically come down from a year ago. He did say, though, that COVID-19 may still linger and that countries need to learn to manage it along with other respiratory illnesses. Back here in the Philippines, the extended state of calamity for COVID-19 is already set to expire by the end of the month. The Health Department has been pushing for the passage of a public health emergency bill to help continue pandemic response.
There is still a lot that all countries can do to save lives, but we have come a long way. We're hopeful that at some point next year, we will be able to say that COVID-19 is no longer a global health emergency.
Argentinian legend Luis Scola has been named FIBA World Cup 2023 Global Ambassador. The 42-year-old Argentinian is a veteran internationalist, having played for Argentina in 5 World Cups, 5 Olympics, and multiple qualifying tournaments. He is also the second all-time top scorer in World Cup history with 716 points. Being a key piece of Argentina's so-called golden generation, Scola will be helping FIBA and the host countries in promoting the 2023 World Cup, which will tip off on August 25, 2023.
I'm also excited to go to the Philippines to watch games there because I know how fanatics the people is there for basketball. I feel sorry that I couldn't do it as a player, but I'm looking forward to go there as a fan and just lead that environment.
There will be a Game 3 between the UP Fighting Maroons and the Ateneo Blue Eagles.
With their backs against the wall, the Blue Eagles shut down the Fighting Maroons in Game 2 to force a do-or-die match for the title. Mobile journalist Bel Gregorio gives us a front seat to the story.
Emotions were heating up in the Smart Araneta Coliseum yesterday for Game 2 of the Battle of Katipunan Finals. Before the tip-off, special awards for Season 85 standout players were handed out. De La Salle archer Kevin Kiambao was awarded Rookie of the Year after finishing his first season with an average of around 11 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 assists a game. The Soaring Falcons hero Jerome Lastimosa was recognized as the PS Bankable Player of the Season for taking home the most Player of the Game honors. This season's mythical team included UE's Luis Villegas, Ateneo's Dave Ildefonso and Fourth Padrigao, and UP's Carl Tamayo and Malick Diouf. The spotlight was on the Senegalese big man as he was awarded this season's most valuable player, averaging 10.8 points, 10.9 rebounds, 2.9 assists, 1.6 blocks, and 1.5 steals. However, but the Fighting Maroon celebrations were spoiled as Ateneo extended the final showdown 65-55. Ange Kwame led the way for the Blue Eagles with 19 points, 11 rebounds, 3 steals, and 3 blocks. A big loss for UP was their Game 1 hero Xavier Lucero, who hurt his left knee midway through the fourth quarter. The Fighting Maroons have yet to release a statement on Xavier's MRI results, leaving his status for Game 3 up in the air. Both UP and Ateneo are bracing themselves for an all-out war on Monday as they battle it out in the Big Dome for the crown. Mobile Journal Bel Gregorio. We are One News.
And that's the big story tonight. For more updates, follow News 5, the Philippine Star, and Business World Online. You may also log on to onenews.ph for more analysis. Ako po si Robbie Alampay.
The big story is also available via Signal Play app. Make a free account now at signalplay.com and stream One News anytime, anywhere. Ako po si Gretchen Ho. Stay safe, Philippines, and happy holidays. We're down to our last 10 days before Christmas.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.